Husband kicks wife out. 5 years later, she returns by helicopter with identical triplets. Helena Albuquerque never imagined that her life would change forever that night. While she was arranging the final details for her husband Ricardo Mendonca's birthday surprise, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages. "Is everything ready for tonight?" "He suspects nothing," said one of the messages that Ricardo happened to read by chance. "Who is this man sending you messages?" Ricardo yelled, throwing the phone toward Helena, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "What man? What are you talking about?" Helena picked up the phone from the floor, the screen now cracked, not understanding Ricardo's sudden burst of anger. "Don't pretend you don't know. I saw the messages. Is everything ready for tonight? He suspects nothing." Ricardo repeated in a mocking tone. "You're cheating on me, aren't you?" Helena's face turned pale. That message was from Paulo, Ricardo's brother, who had been helping her with the surprise party she'd been planning for months. "Ricardo, you've got it all wrong. I can explain." "Explain what? That you planned a meeting with another man on my birthday?" Ricardo interrupted, his face red with rage, the veins in his neck bulging. "It's not like that. Please just listen to me." "Listen to more lies?" Ricardo opened the bedroom door and started throwing Helena's clothes into a suitcase. "I want you out of my house now." Helena tried to approach, but Ricardo wouldn't let her. At that moment, Donna Carmen, her mother-in-law, entered the apartment using the emergency key. She had always lived in the same building, 2 floors above, and had probably heard the shouting. "What's going on here?" Carmen asked, looking at the chaos in the apartment, clothes scattered, an open suitcase on the bed, and her daughter-in-law in tears. "My perfect daughter-in-law is cheating on me," Ricardo said, still tossing Helena's belongings into the suitcase. Helena turned to her mother-in-law, hoping she could calm Ricardo down. "Donna Carmen, please explain it to him. You know about the surprise we're planning." But Carmen's face hardened, and a strange gleam appeared in her eyes. "Surprise? What surprise?" She feigned confusion, though she knew every detail of the party Helena had been organizing. That was the moment Helena realized. Her mother-in-law had always wanted her out of Ricardo's life. Throughout the 3 years of marriage, Carmen never hid the fact that she thought Helena was unworthy of her successful son. Now, with this misunderstanding, she saw the perfect opportunity. "Son, if you found something, you should trust your instincts," Carmen said, placing a hand on Ricardo's shoulder. "Mendonca men must not be made fools of." Helena felt her world collapse. Just 2 weeks earlier, she had discovered she was pregnant. She had planned to share the news at the surprise party, along with a vow renewal. It would have been the perfect birthday gift for Ricardo. "Ricardo, Helena hesitated. Should she reveal the pregnancy amid all this chaos? Before she could finish, Ricardo threw the packed suitcase into the hallway. "I want you out of here in 5 minutes, or I'll call building security." With a broken heart and her hand instinctively over her still flat belly, Helena grabbed her purse, a few important documents, and walked out of the luxurious apartment in Barra da Tijuca, Rio de Janeiro, without looking back. As the elevator descended, a decision began forming in her mind. If Ricardo didn't trust her enough to at least hear her out, maybe it really was best to go their separate ways. What she didn't know at that moment was that 5 years later, she would return to Rio, not as the insecure young interior designer who left, but as a successful entrepreneur, and she wouldn't return alone. She would arrive by helicopter accompanied by 3 identical boys, triplets, exact copies, of their father who never knew they existed. Helena took a taxi to her best friend Renata's house in Botafogo. During the ride, 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. How could Ricardo doubt her like that? Why didn't he give her a chance to explain? And Donna Carmen, the betrayal from her mother-in-law, who knew about the entire surprise, hurt perhaps even more than Ricardo's mistrust. "Helena, my God, what happened?" Renata asked, opening the door to find her friend crying, holding just one suitcase. Through sobs, Helena told her everything: the misunderstanding over the messages, Ricardo's explosion, Carmen's silent betrayal, and finally the newly discovered pregnancy. "You need to go back and tell him about the baby. That will change everything," Renata suggested, handing her a cup of chamomile tea. "No, Helena wiped her tears, a new determination in her eyes. "If he didn't trust me after 3 years together, I don't want him to stay just because of the baby." Renata hugged her friend, respecting her decision even though she silently disagreed. In the days that followed, Ricardo tried contacting Helena multiple times, but she didn't answer his calls. She needed time to think, to decide what to do next. Meanwhile, she settled temporarily in Renata's guest room. A week after the incident, Helena finally checked her emails. Among dozens of unread messages was one from a former design professor informing her of a job opening at a decorating company in São Paulo. Maybe it's a sign, Helena thought. A new city, a fresh start for her. And her baby, far from painful memories and her toxic ex-mother-in-law's influence. Without a second thought, Helena replied to the email and attached her portfolio. 2 days later, she received confirmation. The job was hers if she wanted it. The salary wasn't great, but it would be enough to support herself while building a new life. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, please leave a like. And especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. At the apartment in Botafogo, Helena was packing her bags, now bound for São Paulo, when her phone rang. It was Paulo, her brother-in-law, concerned about her disappearance. "Helena, what the hell happened? Ricardo is devastated. He found out about the surprise party and hasn't stopped looking for you." Helena felt a pang in her chest. Part of her wanted to run back, tell him about the baby, try again, but another part, wounded and tired, knew things would never be the same. "Paulo, I need some time. Tell Ricardo I'm okay, but I need to think." She hesitated. "And don't tell him about the baby." "Baby? What baby? Helena, are you—" "Please, Paulo, let that stay between us, at least for now." Paulo, always the most sensible of the Mendonça brothers, promised to keep her secret, but insisted she shouldn't wait too long to tell Ricardo the truth. The next morning, Helena flew to São Paulo, leaving behind not only Rio de Janeiro, but an entire life of shared dreams and plans for the future. The apartment she rented was small, in a middle-class neighborhood on the west side of São Paulo. Nothing like the luxurious place she had shared with Ricardo, but it would be enough to start over. Her first day at the new company was harder than expected. Intense morning sickness made her late, and her new boss, Marcio Alencar, didn't seem very understanding. "Ms. Albuquerque, I understand you're new in town, but punctuality is essential here," he warned, without even looking her in the eye. Helena swallowed the urge to explain her condition. She wasn't ready to reveal her pregnancy, fearing it might jeopardize her position. Weeks passed. Helena threw herself into her work, despite the advancing pregnancy's challenges. At her first prenatal appointment in São Paulo, she received news that left her breathless. "Congratulations, Ms. Albuquerque, you're expecting triplets." Helena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Triplets? How would she care for 3 babies alone in a new city with an unstable job? Meanwhile, in Rio de Janeiro, Ricardo was drowning in guilt and remorse. After discovering the truth about the messages and the surprise party Helena had planned, he desperately tried to find her. Calls, texts, even visits to her friends and family. Nothing. "You should hire a detective," suggested his friend Gustavo during a business lunch. "If she doesn't want to be found, maybe you need professional help." Ricardo considered it, but before he could act, his mother interfered again. "Son, sometimes things happen for a reason," said Carmen during a dinner at her penthouse. "Maybe Helena wasn't really the right woman for you." "Mom, please, it was all a misunderstanding, and I threw her out without even letting her explain." Ricardo ran his hands through his hair in despair. "You knew about the surprise, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me?" Carmen looked away, uncomfortable. "Yes, but I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought she might be lying to me too. It was a lie, of course. Carmen knew exactly what Helena had planned. In fact, she had even helped with some of the preparations, just to maintain control of the situation. She never imagined things would turn out so perfectly in her favor. "I'm hiring the detective," Ricardo decided, ignoring his mother's subtle protests. "I need to find her. I need to apologize." What Ricardo didn't know was that Carmen would act behind his back. As soon as dinner ended, she made a call. "Marcelo, it's Carmen Mendonça. I need a favor." In São Paulo, Helena's belly was growing visibly. At 5 months pregnant, hiding her condition at work became impossible. Surprisingly, her boss Marcio, who once seemed so rigid, turned out to be supportive. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he asked after Helena finally revealed she was expecting triplets. "We could have adjusted your hours, reduced your project load." "That's exactly why I didn't. I didn't want special treatment or anyone thinking I couldn't handle the responsibilities," Helena explained, relieved by his reaction. What she didn't expect was that Marcio had a proposal that would completely change her plans. "I have a client, Livia Montero, who wants to redecorate a chain of children's stores. I think you'd be perfect for the project, especially now." The project with Livia was an immediate success. The businesswoman, a middle-aged woman with a nationwide children's store empire, was impressed not only with Helena's talent but also with her personal story. 3 babies and no father around. Livia shook her head, admiring the young designer's courage. "You're a warrior, you know that?" An unexpected friendship blossomed between the two women. Livia, who had never had children, saw in Helena the daughter she never had, and Helena found in Livia the maternal support she desperately needed at that moment. As Helena's pregnancy advanced, she faced increasingly greater challenges. Her small apartment seemed less and less suitable for welcoming 3 newborns. Her salary, although good, would not be enough to cover all the upcoming expenses. And the loneliness. The loneliness was sometimes overwhelming. In her most vulnerable moments, Helena found herself thinking about Ricardo. Had he really tried to find her? Was he suffering from her absence, or had he already moved on? And more importantly, did he have the right to know about the children who were about to be born? Paulo, the only one who kept sporadic contact with Helena, brought news that only added to her confusion. He hired a detective. "Helena, he's desperate to find you." Helena felt her heart tighten. Part of her wanted to be found. She wanted Ricardo to know about the babies. She wanted to believe they could fix everything. But another part, more cautious and wounded, feared reliving the pain of that night. "Don't tell him where I am, Paulo, not yet. When the babies are born, maybe then I'll be ready." What Helena didn't know was that her words were in vain. The detective Ricardo had hired had already discovered her whereabouts in São Paulo, but under Carmen's influence, who paid a considerable sum for his silence, the man delivered a false report to Ricardo. "I regret to inform you, Mr. Mendonça, but your wife left the country. I have information that she is in Europe, probably Portugal, with a new partner." Ricardo felt as if the ground had opened beneath his feet. His Helena, hadn't just left him. She was already with another man. She had rebuilt her life so quickly while he was still consumed by guilt and longing. "Thank you for your work," said Ricardo, handing over an envelope with the final payment to the detective, who avoided looking him in the eyes. "You may consider the case closed." That night, Ricardo drank until he passed out. In the following days, he threw himself into work, trying to drown the pain of definitive loss. His company, a mid-sized construction firm specializing in commercial developments, became his only focus. But without Helena's strategic vision, she had always advised him in business, Ricardo began making rash decisions, risky investments, dubious partnerships, overly aggressive expansion. The consequences didn't take long to appear. The company began to accumulate debt. Meanwhile, in her 8th month of pregnancy, Helena received a surprising proposal from Livia. Your designs for the stores were so successful that I thought, why not an exclusive line of children's clothing and accessories? Livia proposed during a lunch. You would be the creative director. I'd take care of the financial and operational side. Helena looked at Livia with teary eyes. Livia, I don't even know what to say. I'm about to have 3 babies. How will I manage a new product line? And I have the resources to help on both fronts. Livia smiled, taking Helena's hands in hers. Think about it. You'll have flexible hours. You can work from home when needed, and we'll be able to hire nannies and assistants. The proposal was too perfect to refuse. A partnership with Livia would mean financial stability for Helena and her children, as well as the opportunity to do what she loved. The following week, Helena gave birth to the triplets, Antonio, Bernardo, and Carlos, 3 identical boys with Ricardo's blue eyes and blonde hair. The delivery was difficult, but Livia was by her side the entire time, assuming the role that should have been Ricardo's. When the babies turned 2 months old, Helena and Livia launched Tres Vidas, 3 lives, a brand of children's clothing and accessories inspired by the triplets. The success was immediate. Mothers loved the practical and stylish pieces, designed by someone who understood their real needs. Helena divided her time between the babies and the company, which was growing surprisingly fast. Gradually, Tres Vidas opened its own stores, first in São Paulo, then in other Brazilian capitals. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us as we're just getting started. Continuing. In Rio de Janeiro, Ricardo's situation was deteriorating. The construction company was on the verge of bankruptcy. His apartment had been mortgaged to cover debts, and even his relationship with his mother was strained after Ricardo discovered Carmen had interfered in several of his business dealings, always with disastrous results. You ruined everything, Mom. My marriage, my company, my life, Ricardo shouted during a particularly heated argument. Carmen, not knowing how to handle her son's anger, resorted to an even bigger lie. I only tried to protect you. Helena never truly loved you. I knew she was cheating on you from the beginning of the marriage. I have proof. What proof? Ricardo challenged, tired of his mother's manipulations. Letters. I found letters from her to another man. I kept them to protect you, but I see now it's time for the truth. Ricardo knew he should be suspicious. His mother had lied so many times, but the pain of abandonment, worsened by the detective's report, left him vulnerable to yet another manipulation. 5 years passed since that fateful night when Helena left Rio de Janeiro. The triplets had grown up healthy and happy, never knowing their father. The Tres Vidas brand had become one of the most important in the children's segment in Brazil, with stores in every capital and plans for international expansion. Helena, now a respected and successful entrepreneur, rarely thought about returning to Rio. Her life was firmly rooted in São Paulo. Her children were happy, her company was thriving, but fate had other plans. One seemingly normal morning, Antonio, the quietest of the triplets, fainted during breakfast. At the hospital, after a series of tests, the diagnosis devastated Helena: sickle cell anemia, a rare genetic condition that would require a bone marrow transplant. The compatibility between siblings is high, especially in identical twins, explained Dr. Barros. Let's test Bernardo and Carlos immediately. To Helena's dismay, neither brother was a match for Antonio, a rare occurrence among identical triplets explained by a specific mutation in Antonio's case. Mrs. Albuquerque, we need to test the child's father, suggested Dr. Barros. Paternal compatibility may be the solution in this case. Helena felt the world spin. After 5 years of keeping Ricardo out of the boys' lives, she now needed him. Not only did she have to find him, but she would have to reveal the existence of the children she had kept secret. With a heavy heart, Helena made the call she had avoided for so long. Paulo, it's Helena. I need to talk to Ricardo. It's urgent. It's about our children." On the other end of the line, Paolo was silent for a few seconds before replying with a trembling voice. "Helena, a lot has happened here. Ricardo, he's not well. The company went bankrupt. He lost almost everything. And when I say he's not well, I don't just mean financially." "What do you mean?" "He's been drinking a lot. Isolated himself from everyone. Not even his mother can get him to leave the house." Helena felt a pang of guilt. Despite everything, she had never wanted Ricardo to suffer like this. "Paolo, one of the boys is sick. We need Ricardo for a possible marrow transplant. Please help me." Paolo promised to prepare his brother for the news, and 2 days later confirmed that Ricardo had agreed to take the compatibility test, but with one condition. He wanted to meet the children first. Helena hesitated. Was she ready for this reunion? Were the boys ready to meet the father they never knew existed? But Antonio's health was the priority. There was no choice. "We're going to Rio tomorrow," confirmed Helena, feeling a mix of apprehension and, surprisingly, expectation. Livia, always present in crucial moments, offered her private helicopter for the trip. "You need comfort in this difficult moment, and honestly," she smiled with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, "I want to see the look on that ex-husband's face when you descend from the sky with 3 mini-clones of him." Helena couldn't help but laugh. Despite the gravity of the situation, Livia always knew how to ease her tension. The next morning, Helena dressed the triplets with care. Antonio, even weakened by the illness, was excited about riding in a helicopter. Helena chose a white, elegant suit. She wanted to appear confident and successful when seeing Ricardo again. The helicopter landed at a helipad near Copacabana Beach, causing a stir among passers-by. It wasn't every day that a private helicopter dropped off 3 identical children accompanied by an elegant woman. Paolo was waiting for them at the helipad exit, his face a mixture of emotion and nervousness. "Helena, my God." Paolo stared in astonishment at the triplets, who were exact copies of his brother as a child. "It's like seeing Ricardo at age 5, times 3. Helena hugged her brother-in-law, genuinely happy to see him. "Boys, this is Uncle Paolo, your dad's brother." The triplets, always outgoing, bombarded Paolo with questions about the father they were about to meet as they walked to the car that would take them to Ricardo. The apartment where Ricardo now lived was very different from the luxurious property in Barra da Tijuca. A small 3-bedroom in Botafogo, furnished simply, almost austerely. When Helena rang the doorbell, her heart beat so loudly she was sure everyone could hear. The door opened, and there he was, Ricardo Mendonça, the man who had once been her whole world. But he was no longer the confident, arrogant executive she had known. This Ricardo had deep circles under his eyes, disheveled hair with a few premature grey strands, and an expression of defeat that broke Helena's heart. But it was when Ricardo looked down and saw the 3 identical boys that his world truly stopped. Standing before him were 3 miniature versions of himself, same blue eyes, same blonde hair, same facial features. My sons," Ricardo murmured, falling to his knees, tears streaming freely down his face. Antonio, always the most sensitive of the 3, stepped forward. "Are you our dad? Why did you never come visit us?" The innocent, direct question hit Ricardo like a punch. He looked at Helena, searching for guidance, some clue about how to answer. Helena knelt beside Ricardo, putting herself at the boy's eye level. "Daddy didn't know you existed, my loves. It was a misunderstanding between us. A misunderstanding I caused," Ricardo completed, finding the strength to speak. "I deeply regret it." Bernardo, always the most practical of the triplets, crossed his arms. "If you're our dad, why did Mom say we came here because Antonio is sick? Are you a doctor?" Ricardo looked confused at Helena, who briefly explained Antonio's situation and the need for a compatibility test. "I'll do whatever is necessary," Ricardo promised immediately. "When can we take the test?" "Tomorrow morning," Helena replied. "Doctor Barros managed to schedule it at the Samaritano hospital." At that moment, they heard keys at the door. It was Carmen, entering without knocking, as she had always done. Upon seeing Helena and 3 children identical to her son, the woman froze in the doorway. "What does this mean?" she asked, her face pale as if she had seen a ghost. "Oh, that, mother," Ricardo replied, a new determination in his voice. "It means you kept me from knowing my children for 5 years. Children? What children? This woman shows up out of nowhere after abandoning you, and you believe her." Carmen tried to maintain control, but panic was visible in her eyes. Helena, who had dreamed for years of confronting her former mother-in-law, surprised everyone with her calm. "Mrs. Carmen, these are your grandchildren. Antonio, Bernardo, and Carlos are here because Antonio needs a bone marrow transplant, and Ricardo may be a match." Carlos, the most observant of the triplets, tugged on his mother's coat sleeve. "Mommy, is that the bad grandma from the stories?" The innocent question caused an awkward silence in the room. Ricardo looked questioningly at Helena, who blushed. "Sometimes I tell them bedtime stories," Helena explained, avoiding Carmen's gaze. "Maybe I mentioned a rather difficult grandmother." Carmen looked ready to explode, but Ricardo raised his hand, silencing her. "Mother, I think it's best if you leave. I need time with my family." The word family hung in the air, full of meaning. For the boys who had only ever had Helena, for Helena who never thought she'd hear Ricardo refer to them that way, and for Ricardo who had just discovered he had far more to lose and to regain than he ever imagined. Carmen left, slamming the door, but no one cared. There were far more important matters at hand. The following hours were an emotional roller coaster. Ricardo wanted to know everything about the boys, their likes, their personalities, their favorite stories, their first steps, their first words. To her own surprise, Helena shared these memories willingly, realizing how much Ricardo had missed. "Why didn't you tell me, Helena?" Ricardo asked in a moment, when the boys were distracted playing in the makeshift room Paolo had prepared for them. "Why did you hide my children from me for 5 years? Helena sighed. The question she had feared was finally spoken. "That night, when you kicked me out without letting me explain, something broke inside me, Ricardo. The trust that was the foundation of our relationship disappeared, and when I found out I was pregnant—" Helena paused, choosing her words. "I didn't want you to come back just out of obligation. I wanted you to come back because you loved me and trusted me. I tried to find you," Ricardo protested. "I hired a private investigator who was bribed by your mother to lie," Paolo added, entering the room with coffee for everyone. "I found out a few months ago when I discovered payment receipts between Mom and that so-called investigator." Ricardo looked devastated by this new revelation. "And you told me, Paolo?" "I tried, brother, but you were so deep in the bottle, so convinced Helena had left you for another man. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. That really helps us who are just starting out." Continuing. The next morning, the whole family went to the Samaritano hospital for compatibility tests. Dr. Barros, who had traveled from São Paulo especially for the case, greeted them with optimism. "Compatibility between parent and child is less common than between siblings," he explained, as he prepared Ricardo for the sample collection, "but it's still a real possibility, especially in cases like this." While they waited for the results, Ricardo took the opportunity to get to know his sons better. Antonio, despite his illness, was curious about everything related to his father, especially his work as a builder. "Do you build buildings like the Lego ones?" the boy asked, eyes wide with admiration. "I used to build," Ricardo corrected with a tinge of shame. "The company's no longer operating." "Why?" Bernardo asked bluntly. Ricardo looked at Helena, uncertain about how much to reveal to the children. "Daddy made some difficult business decisions," Helena explained gently, "but he's very talented, and I'm sure he'll recover." The grateful look Ricardo gave Helena didn't go unnoticed by Paolo, who smiled discreetly. After what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Barros returned with the preliminary results. His serious expression worried everyone. "I have two pieces of news," he announced. "The first is yes, Mr. Mendonça, you are compatible with Antonio. We can proceed with the transplant." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. "And the second news?" Helena asked, noting the doctor's hesitation. "Mr. Mendonça, during the exams we detected a condition you're likely unaware of. You carry the same genetic variant that caused Antonio's sickle cell anemia." Ricardo frowned, confused. "What does that mean, Doctor?" "It means you are a carrier of the recessive gene. In most cases, carriers don't develop the disease. They only pass it on. But in some rare cases like yours, mild symptoms can appear over a lifetime." "Doctor," Barros consulted his notes, "have you experienced episodes of extreme fatigue, joint pain, or unexplained respiratory problems?" Ricardo exchanged a surprised look with Helena. "My whole life, I've always had those sudden weakness episodes, especially during stressful times. The doctors never found the cause. It's possible they were mild sickle cell crises. In your case, the condition seems to be well managed by your body, but it still requires monitoring." Helena couldn't help but think of all the times Ricardo had fainted during their marriage, always after intense arguments or excessive work periods. She had always attributed those episodes to stress or low blood pressure. She had never imagined it could be something genetic. "And did my mother know about this?" Ricardo asked, another puzzle piece falling into place. "I can't say for sure," Dr. Barros answered cautiously, "but if these symptoms started in childhood, it's likely she did." Carmen. Helena and Ricardo thought simultaneously. Carmen, who always overprotected her son. Carmen, who meddled in every aspect of Ricardo's life, from business to marriage. Carmen, who justified everything by saying Ricardo was fragile and needed special care. "She knew," Ricardo stated bitterly, "and she hid it from me my whole life." The revelation about Ricardo's condition changed the dynamics of the treatment. Now, not only would Antonio receive care, but Ricardo would also undergo a full evaluation. Dr. Barros recommended that both be transferred to São Paulo, where there was a specialized center for hematologic diseases. "The transplant can be done there, and Mr. Mendonça can begin his own treatment at the same time," the doctor explained. To Helena's surprise, Ricardo agreed immediately. "There's nothing tying me to Rio now," he said, giving her a meaningful look, "and I want to be near my sons." The night before their departure for São Paulo, while the boys slept in the improvised room, Ricardo and Helena finally had the conversation that should have happened 5 years earlier. "There was never another man, Ricardo," Helena began, sitting on the small balcony of the apartment. "The messages were from Paulo about the surprise party we were organizing for you, a vow renewal." "I know that now." Ricardo covered his face with his hands. "I was a proud fool and paid the highest price. I lost 5 years of my children's lives. And I paid the price of pride too," Helena admitted. "I could have insisted, could have come back and explained, but I was so hurt." "And you built an amazing life without me," Ricardo noted, a mix of admiration and sadness in his voice. "I saw the article about your company in Entrepreneurs magazine, 3 Lives. The name makes more sense now." Helena smiled, surprised that Ricardo had seen the article. "Paulo showed me," he explained, guessing her thoughts. "That's when I found out you hadn't gone to Europe with another man, as the detective claimed. I confronted my mother, but she denied everything, of course." "Your mother?" Helena hesitated, not wanting to reopen old wounds. "Your mother never liked me, Ricardo, not from the first day. My mother would never like any woman who took me away from her," Ricardo acknowledged bitterly. "And now I know why. She knew about my condition. She knew I could have crises if I got too stressed. She used it to control me my whole life, to keep me dependent on her." A reflective silence fell. Between them, so many misunderstandings, so many manipulations, so much time lost. "What happened to the construction company?" Helena asked, genuinely interested. Paulo mentioned financial difficulties. Ricardo sighed deeply. After you left, I buried myself in work. I wanted to expand, grow quickly, maybe to prove I could succeed without you. Ricardo paused, recalling his disastrous decisions. Mom suggested a trustworthy accountant, her man. He embezzled millions before we realized. When I found out, it was too late. Helena felt a pang of compassion. The arrogant and confident Ricardo she had known had been replaced by a broken man, betrayed by his own mother and robbed of his family. As much as she had suffered because of his actions, she couldn't help but feel empathy. You know, Livia always says there are no coincidences, only encounters marked by destiny, Helena said, looking at the stars scattered over the Rio sky. Maybe all this had to happen for us to get where we are now. And where are we? Ricardo asked, his gaze fixed on Helena's profile against the night sky. Helena turned to face him, the question hanging between them like an unspoken promise. We're at a new beginning, Ricardo. For Antonio, for the other boys, and maybe for us too. The next morning, Livia's helicopter transported them all to São Paulo. Helena watched Rio de Janeiro fade away, Guanabara Bay shrinking in the distance, and felt that a cycle had closed. 5 years ago, she had left Rio alone, pregnant and heartbroken. Now she was returning to São Paulo with her 3 sons, and the man who, despite everything, still had a place in her heart. In São Paulo, Livia arranged a suite at Hospital São Luís, where Antonio and Ricardo would be treated by the best medical team in the country. Always practical, the businesswoman also secured an apartment near the hospital for Ricardo. You need privacy and proximity, Livia explained, when Helena protested, insisting Ricardo could stay at a hotel. I'm not suggesting you move back in together, just making it easier to visit the boys. The transplant was scheduled for 2 weeks later, the necessary time to prepare both Antonio and Ricardo. During that period, the other triplets, Bernardo and Carlos, were introduced to their father's routine. They visited the hospital in the morning, spent the day between Ricardo's apartment and Helena's house, and slept with their mother. Ricardo, determined to regain his children's trust, made every effort to be actively involved in their lives, despite being limited by medical preparations. He learned about their preferences, helped with homework, told bedtime stories. For children who had never had a present father, every small gesture was a wonderful discovery. Mom, why don't you and Dad live together like our friends' parents? Bernardo asked one night while Helena tucked them into bed. The question caught Helena off guard. How could she explain the complexity of adult relationships to a 5-year-old? Sometimes, my love, adults need time to work through their problems, she answered, choosing her words carefully. Daddy and I had a very big disagreement before you were born, and we're just starting to talk again. But do you still like each other? Carlos insisted, always attentive to adult emotions. Helena felt her face flush. We will always care for each other because the 3 of you are the most important thing to both of us, Helena replied diplomatically. But the truth Helena admitted only to herself in the quietest hours of the night was that her feelings for Ricardo had never completely disappeared. They were dormant, buried under layers of hurt and distrust, but still alive. Now, seeing him with the children, witnessing his determination to save Antonio, even at the cost of his own fragile health, those feelings resurfaced with unexpected force. The day of the transplant arrived. Antonio, despite his young age, showed surprising courage. I'll get better soon, Mummy, he promised, squeezing Helena's hand as he was prepared for the procedure. Then we can all live together like a real family. The procedure lasted hours. Helena, Ricardo, Livia and Paulo took turns in the waiting room, always ensuring that Bernardo and Carlos were distracted and comfortable. When Dr. Barros finally appeared, his tired smile said everything before he even spoke the words, "Both are doing well." The transplant was a success. The following days were marked by slow recovery. Weakened by the bone marrow collection, Ricardo still insisted on visiting Antonio daily in the isolation room. The two developed a ritual. They played cards through the glass, communicated via intercoms, told each other stories. It was during one of these sessions that Ricardo made an unexpected discovery. While waiting for Antonio to pick his next card, he noticed a notebook on the table beside his son's bed. "Mommy's diary" was written on the cover in elegant handwriting he immediately recognized. "What's that notebook, son?" Ricardo asked, pointing to the diary. "Mom lent it to me so I wouldn't feel lonely," Antonio explained innocently. "It's the diary she wrote when she was pregnant with us. There are stories from when we were still in her belly." Ricardo felt a lump in his throat. That notebook contained memories from a period he had completely missed. Helena's pregnancy, the birth of the boys, their early days of life. Can I take a look?" Ricardo asked hesitantly. Antonio nodded, pushing the notebook toward the glass so his father could see it better. "Mom said there are no secrets in it, just our stories." With trembling hands, Ricardo began to read the first pages of the diary. Helena had started writing the day after that fateful night when she left Rio. October 10th, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo. "I left everything behind today, my home, my dreams, my plans for the future, and I take with me only a few clothes, documents, and this small miracle growing inside me. A baby, our baby, Ricardo. How can I tell you now? After what happened, after the accusations, the distrust, you didn't even give me a chance to explain about the messages, about the surprise. I had been planning for months. Maybe it's better this way. If you didn't trust me after 3 years together, how could you trust me now? You'd think it's a trap, a ploy to make you stay with me. Donna Carmen would surely say that, and maybe you'd believe her, like you always did. So I'll go on alone for now, until I find the strength to tell the truth, and until I'm sure you deserve to be part of this child's life." Ricardo turned the page, silent tears running down his face. October 24th, São Paulo. First appointment with the obstetrician today, and the surprise that almost made me faint in the doctor's office. "It's not one baby, it's 3. Triplets. How will I take care of 3 babies alone in a new city, with a job that barely started? I thought of you immediately, Ricardo. How would your face look upon hearing you'd be the father of triplets? You always talked about having a big family, although I suspected it was more your mother's wish than yours. Funny how, now, in the loneliest and scariest moment of my life, I still think about sharing the news with you. I still imagine what it would be like if we were together, planning the baby's room, choosing names. Paulo called today, said you're looking for me. Part of me wants to answer the next call, tell you everything. But another part, more cautious, more wounded, hesitates. What if you want the babies but not me? What if your mother turns this into a legal battle? No, it's not time yet. I need to grow stronger first, to build a safe home for our children. The entries continued, detailing every ultrasound, every baby movement, every preparation for birth. Helena had recorded everything, her hopes, her fears, her loneliness. And on every page, Ricardo realized, there were mentions of him, questions about whether she should contact him, reflections on what kind of father he would be, even internal debates about the names she chose. June 7th, Santa Catarina Hospital, São Paulo. They were born. My little warriors are here, healthy and perfect. Antonio, Bernardo, and Carlos. Strong names for strong boys, just as you always said you wanted, Ricardo. Antonio has your stubborn chin, Bernardo, your curious eyes, and Carlos, oh, Carlos has your smile, the one that won me over on the first day. 3 little versions of you, as if nature wanted to ensure that even in your absence you'd be present in my life through them. Livia took pictures. I keep every one of them in a special box. Maybe one day, when the boys are older and ask about their father, I'll be able to show them. Maybe one day you yourself will see them. For now, I tell myself I made the right choice. I protected my children from rejection, from doubt, from the family drama your mother would surely create. But on nights like this, While the three sleep beside me in their cribs, I can't help but wonder, what if? What if I had insisted more? What if you had listened to me? Would we be here together, marveling at these three miracles we created? Ricardo closed the diary, unable to continue reading through the tears blurring his vision. 5 years of lost memories. 5 years of moments he would never get back, all because of a misunderstanding, wounded pride, manipulations, and lies. Antonio watched his father curiously, not fully understanding his reaction. "Daddy, are you sad?" Ricardo quickly wiped his eyes, forcing a smile. "No, son. I'm happy. Happy to finally know you and your brothers, and very proud of your mother, who was so strong for all of you." That night, when Helena came to visit Antonio after work, she found Ricardo waiting for her in the hospital hallway. His red eyes showed he had cried. "I read the diary," he admitted without preamble. Helena's heart raced. That diary held her most intimate thoughts, her deepest vulnerabilities during the hardest moments of her life. "Antonio showed me," Ricardo continued. "I shouldn't have read it without your permission, but—" "It's okay," Helena interrupted gently. "There's nothing in it you weren't meant to know." Ricardo stepped forward, shortening the distance between them. "Helena, I ruined everything, not just that night, but every day afterward, when I let my pride and my mother's manipulation stop me from searching for the truth." His voice faltered. "I missed the first years of my children's lives. I lost you, and even now I don't know if I have the right to ask for another chance." Helena looked at the man in front of her. He was no longer the arrogant Ricardo she had once known, the one who made rash decisions driven by pride. This man was broken, humble, genuinely remorseful. "We don't always get what we deserve, Ricardo," she said at last. "Sometimes we get more, sometimes we get less. What matters is what we do with what we have now." "And what do we have now?" he asked, echoing the question he had posed days earlier on the apartment balcony in Rio. "We have 3 wonderful boys who need both parents. We have a new beginning, if we want it." Helena paused, weighing her next words. "And we have feelings that, despite everything, never completely disappeared." Ricardo's face lit up with cautious hope. "You know, it's not that simple anymore," Helena said gently. "There's a lot between us. Hurt, mistrust, 5 years of separate lives. We can't just go back to what we were." "I don't want to go back to what we were," Ricardo said with surprising firmness. "I want to build something new, something better, something based on truth and trust, not manipulation and secrets." Helena was touched by the sincerity in his voice. This was a Ricardo she had never known, vulnerable, honest, willing to acknowledge his mistakes. "One step at a time," she proposed, offering a small smile, "starting by being good parents to our children." "And partners," Ricardo ventured. "Not necessarily romantic, not yet, but partners in raising the boys, in life." Helena thought for a moment. The idea of Ricardo participating in the boys' daily lives, school meetings, birthdays, family dinners, was something she had always secretly wished for, even in her most painful moments. "Partners," she agreed, extending her hand. Ricardo accepted the offered hand, but instead of a formal handshake, he brought it to his lips in a gesture of respect and gratitude that made Helena's heart beat faster, like in the early days of their courtship. The following weeks were a period of adjustment for everyone. Antonio recovered quickly, surpassing medical expectations. Ricardo, following treatment for his own condition, regained color and energy, and the 5 of them, like a family under reconstruction, began to establish new routines. Ricardo rented an apartment near Helena's house so he could be present daily in the children's lives. More surprisingly, he accepted Livia's offer to work as a consultant in the real estate expansion of Triplets, which now planned to open its own stores in shopping malls across Brazil. "It might be temporary," Helena explained, when Ricardo expressed concern about appearing opportunistic. "Until you decide what you want to do professionally, Livia really needs someone with your construction experience." Deep down, Helena knew that Livia's offer was more than just business. It was a way to keep Ricardo close, to observe him, to assess his true intentions toward Helena and the boys. Livia, who had become a kind of surrogate mother to Helena, was fiercely protective. At first, Ricardo remained strictly professional at work and focused only on the children in his personal life. He respected Helena's space, never visiting her house without an explicit invitation, never forcing conversations about their past or possible future. But over time, the daily proximity began to soften the boundaries. Work meetings extended into dinners, Sunday outings with the boys ended with Helena and Ricardo chatting on the porch after the kids had gone to bed. Painful memories gradually gave way to happier new ones. 6 months after the successful transplant, the family held a small celebration at Helena's house. Antonio, fully recovered, ran and played with his brothers as if he had never been sick. Ricardo, healthier and more at peace than ever, watched his children with overflowing pride. "Congratulations," Livia said, joining him in watching the children, "on your son and your own recovery." "Thank you," Ricardo replied sincerely, "for everything, for taking care of Helena and the boys when I couldn't, for giving me a professional chance when I was at rock bottom, for not hating me despite everything." Livia laughed, a surprisingly youthful sound for a woman of her age and stature. "Oh, I hated you for quite a while, Ricardo Mendonça. Believe me," her face turned more serious, "but I saw how you dedicated yourself to Antonio, how you've been trying with the other boys, and more importantly, I saw the way you look at Helena when you think no one's watching." Ricardo felt his face flush. "I'm that obvious?" he asked. "Like an open book," Livia confirmed, amused. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Ricardo could respond, Helena approached carrying a homemade cake. "What are you two conspiring about over here?" she asked, noticing their knowing smiles. "Just placing a bet on how long it'll take you to accept a dinner date with me," Ricardo replied with a boldness that surprised even himself. "Just the two of us. No kids, no work meetings, no past. Just a man and a woman starting from scratch." Helena almost dropped the cake, recovering at the last moment. Livia skillfully took the dessert from her trembling hands, stepping away with a murmured excuse about finding candles. "Ricardo," Helena began, uncertain how to respond to the unexpected proposal. "I know I promised to take it slow, one step at a time," he interrupted, seizing her moment of hesitation. "And I've respected that. But Helena, the truth is, I never stopped loving you. Not even in the darkest moments, not even when I believed the worst lies." Ricardo took her hands in his. "I understand. If you don't feel the same, if what happened destroyed what had I only asked for a chance to show you the man I've become, the man I want to be for you and for our children." Helena felt a long, suppressed emotion rise in her throat. 5 years of carefully built defenses, of walls raised to protect her heart, now threatened to collapse with those simple words. "I'm afraid," she finally admitted. "Afraid to trust again, to be hurt again. Afraid for the boys who now adore you and would be devastated if something went wrong between us." "I'm afraid too," Ricardo confessed. "Afraid I don't deserve this second chance, that I won't be the father and man you all deserve. But I've learned that living in fear is worse than facing it." He smiled softly. "One dinner, Helena. No strings, no promises. Just one night for us." Helena looked at the children, happy and whole for the first time with their father's presence. She looked at Livia, watching the scene from afar with an approving smile, and finally at Ricardo, the man who had broken her heart and who, against all odds, was finding his way back. "One dinner," she finally agreed, "but you choose the place." That dinner became 2, then 3, and soon regular dates that rekindled what had never fully burned out. Cautious at first, they avoided delicate topics. Gradually, Helena and Ricardo rebuilt their intimacy, this time based on honesty and communication. Carmen, to everyone's surprise, appeared remorseful after a serious health crisis. Confronted with her own fragility, she finally admitted her manipulations and asked forgiveness from Ricardo and Helena. Although the relationship remained cautious, The triplets gradually gained a grandmother, albeit under strict parental supervision. A year after Ricardo's return to Helena and the boys' lives, the family faced an important decision. Tres Vidas was expanding internationally, starting with Argentina. As expansion director, Ricardo would need to spend seasons in Buenos Aires. As CEO, Helena would also need to visit frequently. "We could alternate," Helena suggested during a strategic meeting. "I go 1 month, you the next. Or we could go together," Ricardo proposed, "as a family." The word family hung in the air, heavy with meaning. After months of cautious reconnection, rebuilding trust and rediscovering their relationship, that simple suggestion meant much more than a logistical solution. "Are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we make official what has been real for months, Helena," Ricardo replied softly. "We are a family. We love our children. We love each other. Why continue divided by a past we've already overcome?" That night, after the boys were asleep, Helena and Ricardo sat on her porch, as they had so many times over the past few months. "The boys always ask why we don't all live together," Helena said, gazing at the stars, "especially now that you spend more nights here than at your own apartment." "And what do you tell them?" "That adults are complicated," Helena laughed softly. "But the truth is, I no longer have an answer that makes sense, not for them, not for myself." Ricardo took her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that had become familiar and dear. "Then let me make it simple. Helena Albuquerque, will you officially restart life with me? As husband and wife, parents of our wonderful children, partners in life and business?" Helena felt her eyes well up. The fear she had carried for so long, of trusting, of being hurt again, had gradually been replaced by the certainty that this, Ricardo, more mature and aware, was the man with whom she truly wanted to build a life. "Yes," she replied simply, "but no big parties this time. Just us and our children." "And Livia," Ricardo added with a smile. "She'd never forgive us if we left her out." "And Paulo," Helena added. "He kept in touch when no one else did. He deserves to witness the happy ending he helped build." On the triplets' 6th birthday, in an intimate ceremony in the garden of the family's new home in São Paulo, Helena and Ricardo renewed their vows. Antonio, Bernardo, and Carlos, dressed in matching suits, carried the rings while Livia and Paulo watched emotionally. 6 years ago, a series of misunderstandings and manipulations tore us apart, Ricardo began, holding Helena's hands before the celebrant. "Today, thanks to your strength in raising our children alone, your generosity in allowing me to return, and the love that never fully died, we're here, starting over the right way. 6 years ago, I left Rio de Janeiro with a broken heart and an uncertain future," Helena replied, tears of joy running freely down her face. "Today, I become your wife again, with 3 wonderful gifts who built a bridge between our hearts, even when we seemed hopelessly apart." As they exchanged rings, the triplets clapped enthusiastically, not fully understanding the depth of the moment, but instinctively feeling its importance. After the ceremony, during the small garden reception, Livia pulled Helena aside to a quiet corner. "When you arrived in São Paulo, pregnant and heartbroken, I never imagined we'd be celebrating this moment one day," the businesswoman confessed, emotional. "You've built something extraordinary, Helena. Not just Tres Vidas, but a real life, based on strength, forgiveness, and true love." "I couldn't have done it without you, Livia," Helena replied, hugging her mentor and friend. "You gave me more than business opportunities. You gave me confidence when I needed it most." On the improvised dance floor, Ricardo twirled with the 3 children one at a time, while the others waited impatiently for their turn. Helena watched the scene with a heart overflowing with happiness. The path had been long and difficult, with more pain than anyone should have to endure. But looking at her reunited family, at the man who had found redemption, and at the children who were the best of both of them, she knew every tear had been worth it. The helicopter that had once brought Helena and the triplets back into Ricardo's life remained parked in the field behind the house, not as a symbol of separation or triumphant return, but as a reminder that sometimes it takes altitude to see the full picture of life, with its mistakes, victories, and above all, its second chances. The end of the story. Dear listener, did this story of resilience and reunion touch your heart? Did you relate to Helena, or do you know someone who went through something similar? Leave your comment telling us your thoughts and where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this one.